Organizing for struggle is non-partisan because all the parties are facing the same danger. Mr. Muzseveni has been constantly talking about integrating the region as one of his prime missions. He was saying, I'm still working on the project of integration. He's not just looking at Uganda, no. He's also trying to expand his power into the region. There are those who are saying, you see, this struggle has taken simply too long. Yes, they are there. There are many. The cost is too high. Because of the struggle, you find that a few people, increasingly few, are having a lion's share of the little that we produce. And the system of sharing is increasingly unjust. To change the dynamics that we are talking about. That cannot happen unless we change the dynamics of power. And it will not happen unless we fight for that power. And don't be deceived. You cannot make a constitution unless you have power. You cannot make laws unless you have power. Because laws and constitution serves those who have power. Nepotistic rule, family rule, sectarian rule of Muzseveni has divided the country and created a lot of hatred amongst our people. And of course, the violence also of Ruwero, northern Uganda, eastern Uganda, the violence of Kasensa, it's already going on. The Chinese are already growing food in Uganda and feeding us. We are being fed by Chinese who grow food in our country.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Nze Haji Kabogoza omusomi w'edduwa ntereza ensonga z'amaka ebyenfuna n'endwadde ezitategeerekeka. Haji Kabogoza omusomi w'edduwa nsiŋŋaanibwa ekitigoma ku lw'ejjinja. Bw'obanga otuuse ekitigoma mu ttawuni ku siteegi osobola okuba ku nnamba z'essimu ezo z'olaba zitambula. Gwe wenna ali ewala oyinza okuyita ku mukutu gwaffe ogwa WhatsApp ku layini eyo eya MTN obudde bwonna mbeerako.
Future is going to become increasingly turbulent. We are going to have greater problems before there is the calm and the change that we all have been working for and looking towards. It's going to get worse before it gets better. There is absolutely no doubt about that. And the dynamics of that does not need a prophet to know that things are getting worse and will get worse by the day. Because there are some constants in what is happening that dictate that the future is going to be more turbulent. First, we live in a country that presently has one of the highest population growths in the world. The Uganda growth of the population of 3% is one of the highest on the globe. Some countries now have a negative growth of the population. In other words, their population is not increasing. Ours is not just increasing, it is increasing very fast. And that is why Uganda has one of the youngest populations in the world. We are a country of children, actually. The greatest majority of people who inhabit Uganda are children. The population below 15 years is about half of the population of Uganda. We are now between 43 and 44 million people in Uganda. Half of that are below 15 years, children below 15 years. But as you know, the majority age, the age when you become an adult, is 18. That's the cutoff majority age. So half the population being below 15 means that between 15 and 18 are all children now beyond the 1/2 of the population. So very clearly we are a country of children. And that situation is simply escalating every day. The population growth is escalating every day. Now, that possibly would be an advantage, that we are having human resource. But it's a huge threat and a cause of turbulence if that population growth is not matched by growth of what that population uses. And that's the second constant that we must face to know that the future is turbulent. Because we are in a country where productivity is not just low, but actually decreasing. Productivity, how we increase, how we multiply what we put into production, our labor and the resources we use in production and what we get out is actually decreasing, not increasing. We have low productivity. So the population is advancing, productivity is low. So it means, it's okay. It means, simply means that this surging population is a population that does not have the means of subsistence, the means of sustenance. Now, that is a source of unstoppable turbulence. And why is productivity low with all this population? Because the level of knowledge and skills within our population is very, very low. And actually getting worse by the day, not getting better. And we are facing populations, as I have pointed out, which are not having as much challenge in population growth, and certainly which are investing far more in terms of skills and knowledge development, and therefore their capacity to produce is much higher than ours here. And we are we now live in the same village. So we are villagers on the global stage that have no skills and that are multiplying the lack of skills at a speed that is unprecedented. And this lack of skills, which is unfortunately not focused on, is a huge, huge threat that has been manufactured over all these years. I was recently reviewing the investment in building of knowledge and skills in Uganda compared to other countries. And this is what the situation is like. In a country like Norway, the amount of money they spend on every child, school-going child, in the primary section, elementary education, is $12,682 per child per year. $12,682 per child per year. In the UK, it is £6,600 to £6,700. This is about $7,800 per child per year. In South Africa, now coming closer home, it is between $1,740 and $3,480. South Africa. 1,740, but the other ones is 12,600. Do we see the difference in what is happening in the continents? So in Europe, we are talking about 12,000. In South Africa, 1,700. In Egypt, it is between $300 and $350 per child per year. Egypt. In Kenya, it is $14.20. Kenya, we are coming closer. We are getting closer. It's $14.20. In Rwanda, it is $57. Rwanda here. In Uganda, it is $5.20 per year. That's 20,000 shillings per child per year. 20,000 to build knowledge in our children. 20,000 shillings per year. And that has just increased actually. A little while back it was only 7,000. So now people are drumming that things are better. 20,000. $5. About a third of what Kenya is giving. And of course Kenya is also about 10% of South Africa. And South Africa is about 10% of what is happening in Europe. That is the building of knowledge and skills, which directly translate into productivity of the population. So we have a population that is surging without skills or knowledge and without production. And that is why the future is going to be more turbulent before it gets better. On top of all this, we have an environmental crisis that intensifies every day because we are abusing it. We are abusing the nature. And the environment is protesting very loudly. And this is not just in Uganda, but certainly Uganda is meeting its share of those problems of climate and environmental changes. And so we are dealing with this population that has no knowledge or skills, faced with the drought and with floods and with all other things. We had locusts attack. All this is environmental, which we are dealing with. Therefore, food security is going to be a major threat going forwards. And indeed, food security, as more mouths come on board with less to feed on. So, there is absolutely no doubt that poverty will intensify, and poverty in all its dimensions. Poverty in the pocket, financial poverty, poverty of services, healthcare will get worse without doubt. The contribution that maybe comes from our public purses will become less. We will have more and more unhealthy population. So not only are we having many people, but even those many people will be carrying stomachs full of hookworms and all other health afflictions that people will be walking around with, making them even far less able to deal with their life's demands. Now, what this portends, what that picture portends, is that increasingly we are going to have popular discontent. The population is going to be agitating because they are simply not thriving, simply cannot live. And against this mixture which I have been talking about is the injustice in the application of the resources that we have in this low productivity country. What we produce, how does it get around to service all the people in this country? You find that a few people, increasingly few, are having a lion's share of the little that we produce. So first of all, what we produce is very little. Then people's share on it are increasing exponentially. And the system of sharing is increasingly unjust. So you have, a few people grabbing lion's share. And the majority have no say about that sharing. So they see the injustice. It's like, there is some food coming out of the kitchen after days of having no food in the home. And everybody is anxious about that moment that now some food has been prepared. And then you see the head of the home cut off half of the little food that has been prepared and go and sit somewhere alone. And then maybe biggest son in the home also cuts off the rest of half of what has remained and sits somewhere. And all the children are now looking at the tiny bit that is remaining on the plate. Now there will be agitation. Those children who are hungry, looking at their father taking the lion's share, and their big brother or sister taking the next lion's share, while they have nothing and there is even no hope when the next meal will come. You can rest assured these children are going to get out of control and attack their father with his big plate that he has taken to try and also survive. And that is unrest, the injustice. So we are producing very little, and the little is unjustly used within the community. A few people taking the lion's share. And that has intensified and has been going on all these years. It's not about to stop. And the effects of it are not, you don't need to go to be a scientist to see what is the effects of all that. The few that are sharing this are very scared of the majority who are hungry. And that's why anybody that is somebody in this country must be heavily guarded to protect that person from the rest who are completely marginalized and unable to survive on their own. And that intensifies the crisis. Because all these soldiers guarding the RDC, the soldiers guarding the minister, the soldiers guarding the MP, the soldiers guarding the chairman of the district, the soldiers guarding, all of them are taking from what would have been shared by all these hungry mouths. And the more they become hungry and aggressive, the more they need more security. So instead of dealing with the hunger, they will even take more from those who are hungry to protect themselves. You see? That's why now if Muzseveni is moving from Entebbe to Kampala, which he does daily, because I think he sleeps either in Kampala and works in Entebbe or vice versa, they close the roads about an hour before he takes off to make sure there is nobody in sight who may cause a problem. The people they are closing down are the people that are desperately trying to make a living, produce something. And their day is spoiled by spending hours sitting in their vehicles. Now even borders can't move at that time. You know one who was killed because they were trying to beat that lockdown for Mr. Muzseveni to pass. So all that reduces production and increases the transfer of the little that is produced to those who unjustly share into our production. So the popular discontent and agitation is without doubt going to get worse. People are going to agitate, whether you like it or not. Whether we talk or not, people will agitate. The hungry people will agitate. This is a trajectory that has happened all over the world. It's the basis of all revolutions that have happened across the globe. It will happen here, whether we like it or not. Hence, turbulence ahead, without doubt, will happen. Now let me say this to end the painting the picture of this turbulence. You see, I have told you that we now live in a global village. that we are all competing at par. We are in the same market. We are in that market without knowledge, without skills. We are in that market without what to protect ourselves from others who have knowledge and skills. Again, it does not need somebody with knowledge to go to the moon to know that we face an existential threat, all of us. That actually, the turbulence we are talking about that is going to be happening here is not happening in isolation. Even as we are going through that turbulence, we are interacting with the other ones, and they are impacting on us. Because the resources on the globe are finite. They don't multiply. As our populations are increasing, as our needs and demands are increasing, what to use in servicing all that is not increasing. We have the same land area. We have the same water on the globe I'm talking about. Same water, same land, same natural resources, minerals, and whatever we use in solving the problems of humanity. It's all limited. And the needs are competing. Those who have had more knowledge and more skills and more ability to turn that into productivity and growth have exhausted the resources where they are. The resources now of the world are concentrated, are remaining where there is ignorance. Here, on Africa, where we are not using ours. That's where the resources are remaining. And unfortunately for us, God endowed us also with much more than the others. So we have wonderful weather all the year round. We don't need heaters in the homes. We don't need the soils to do anything to them. Whatever you throw there grows. You know, we have natural water. We don't even have to irrigate. God is irrigating our soil for free of charge all the time. You know. So we have wonderful resources without knowledge, without skills, without ability to protect it, and competing with those who have. So again, the trajectory does not need prophecy. Those who have exhausted their resources and who have the knowledge and skills are going to come and take over where we are, without a doubt. They are going to displace us. It's already going on. The Chinese are already growing food in Uganda and feeding us. We are being fed by Chinese who grow food in our country. The Indians and the other people from Asia have already taken over commerce and industry in the country. And of course, they work in collaboration with our local agents, the local agents who are unfairly taking the little that we have because they are worried about us, the hungry mouths that we may pounce on them anytime, they ally with those who are coming to take over the country so that they can be protected in what they have stolen also and what they are grabbing. So, ladies and gentlemen, be in no doubt that we are talking about a threat of the survival of the African people, let alone the Ugandans we are talking about. Even the continent. I told you the picture on the continent of how we are developing skills and knowledge. Egypt, 300. Rwanda, 50. Kenya, 10. Uganda, 5. Competing with tens of thousands. I'm sure you all know that the continent of America, or the Americas, North and South, were occupied by people like us. The Indian communities, the Red Indian communities and other indigenous communities of those areas, of Australia, of New Zealand, of Canada, who are gone, completely gone. It's like they never existed. All the people who occupy the Americas, Australia subcontinent, New Zealand, where they all came from outside. They are now the populations of those countries. When you hear the leaders, Trump, Biden, what, they are not the indigenous Americans. They all came from outside. In all those continents, Australia, where they came from outside. Be in no doubt, very soon, and it's not, we are not talking about, some people think that when I talk about like this, I'm talking about 100 years. No. Very soon we shall have these countries led by people who are not indigenous people. And the indigenous people, those that will survive, will be on affirmative action somewhere to be preserved, like they are preserving the wild animals. So that you can see how they looked like. See, this is how Ugandans looked like. That's where we are going. If we do not urgently, very urgently, do something about it. It's a race for time. There's no doubt about it. It's a race for time. Regrettably, we don't seem, at least as yet, to be even aware, let alone able to do anything about it. Just be aware. We clearly are not aware, largely, about the threat that we face. And all of us, doesn't matter whether you are in red, in yellow, in blue, in what, you can put on your blues, you will go to extinction in your blue. The red will follow you in the extinction in their red. And the yellows, of course, may be the ones even leading into the extinction. It doesn't matter. We are talking about global dynamics here. And the dynamics within our countries. And so, no doubt, we are facing a very turbulent future. In this complicated turbulence, as I have said, it's no longer just a Ugandan question. It's even a regional question in what is now what we are going to face in this turbulence. When we talk about how do we deal with this, we cannot just deal with it just as Uganda. Yes, we must be the prime movers, but we must know that this problem now has a regional angle and it has a global angle. But before we go to the regional, before we go to the global, we must start with our own home. Of the regional, some of you maybe who are, again, not following the dynamics of the politics, you may not be realizing, and Mr. Muzseveni has been constantly talking about integrating the region as one of his prime missions. You remember, even when he was changing the constitution to remove term limits, to do this, he was saying, I'm still working on the project of integration. This is what is causing me to change this. It's very important. Yes, believe him, it is. He's not just looking at Uganda, no. He's also trying to expand his power into the region. This phenomenon, which is increasingly being talked about, the Bachwezi have no borders, at least the ones that we are talking about. And they are very clearly already mobilizing regionally and developing capacity regionally. And I told you that they are in cahoots with the international grabbers also, who are looking for resources, who are looking for oil, who are looking for minerals. They are in cahoots. And that integration, which our people, which the Musevenis are talking about, is not the integration which some of the other naive people may think about East Africa and what we are seeing in Jumuiya ya Afrika Mashariki. This is a different integration. It's not that. Absolutely not. And when you hear, they were now mobilizing forces to go and protect Congo. And indeed, General Muhoozi said, but don't touch the M23. You may go, but don't touch. This will be very, very dangerous. So now there is a talk going on about how to deal with that situation. So there are complex issues in the region that we must be aware, keep our ears to, because they impact on the turbulence of the future. The regional and the global forces at play in what we are dealing with. In terms of the global forces, some of the people that were backward have broken through, unlike us on the African continent. The Indians have broken through and increased their capacity to produce, to have skills, and to have knowledge. And so, whereas previously the domination of the world was by a few people, now there are countries which are called the BRICS. The Brazils, the Indias, the South Africas, the Russia, which are coming on board. So there is a reorientation of what was previously the Cold War in the global sphere there is a realignment of the geopolitics. And clearly we don't know what to do. That's why even when votes are being taken in the United Nations, the best we can do is to abstain. We are simply saying, we really don't know where to go, we don't know what to do. Leave us. we are stuck in the realignment of global powers. Of course, part of that is what is going on in the war between Russia and Ukraine. It's not a war between Russia and Ukraine, it's a global war that is simply being played out in that arena, in that small arena. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think my hour is running out. What do we do? Out of the region, or some of you maybe who are, again, not following the dynamics of the politics, you may not be realizing, and Mr. Muzseveni has been constantly talking about integrating the region as one of his prime missions. You remember, even when he was changing the constitution to remove term limits, to do this, he was saying, I'm still working on the project of integration. This is what is causing me to change this. It's very important. Yes, believe him, it is. He's not just looking at Uganda, no. He's also trying to expand his power into the region. This phenomenon, which is increasingly being talked about, the Bachwezi have no borders, at least the ones that we are talking about. And they are very clearly already mobilizing regionally and developing capacity regionally. And I told you that they are in cahoots with the international grabbers also, who are looking for resources, who are looking for oil, who are looking for minerals. They are in cahoots. And that integration, which our people, which the Musevenis are talking about, is not the integration which some of the other naive people may think about East Africa and what we are seeing in Jumuiya ya Afrika Mashariki. This is a different integration. It's not that. Absolutely not. And when you hear, you know, they were now mobilizing forces to go and protect Congo. And indeed, General Muhoozi said, but don't touch the M23. You may go, but don't touch. This will be very, very dangerous. So now there is a talk going on about how to deal with that situation. So there are complex issues in the region that we must be aware, keep our ears to, because they impact on the turbulence of the future. The regional and the global forces at play in what we are dealing with. In terms of the global forces, some of the people that were backward have broken through, unlike us on the African continent. The Indians have broken through and increased their capacity to produce, to have skills, and to have knowledge. And so, whereas previously the domination of the world was by a few people, now there are countries which are called the BRICS. You know, the Brazils, the Indias, the South Africas, the Russia, which are coming on board. So there is a reorientation of what was previously the Cold War. In the global sphere, there is realignment of the geopolitics. And clearly we don't know what to do. That's why even when votes are being taken in the United Nations, the best we can do is to abstain. We are simply saying, we really don't know where to go, we don't know what to do. Leave us. we are stuck in the realignment of global powers. Of course, part of that is what is going on in the war between Russia and Ukraine. It's not a war between Russia and Ukraine, it's a global war that is simply being played out in that arena, in that small arena. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think my hour is running out. What do we do? Can you imagine? And that member of the Supreme Court, I have read her case. She has a very, very strong case against the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is the highest court in our land. So are you waiting to run to the court that the court will save you? Absolutely not. We were here when the court was attacked by the military, the Black Mambas. Weren't you here? It was over our own cases of what they were calling PRA, People's Redemption Army, that they said we were having. The courts were attacked twice, directly by the forces. Are those courts with the power? Absolutely not. The Electoral Commission that organizes election. Do we have an Electoral Commission? I don't hear you. Do we have an Electoral Commission? I saw our Electoral Commission, Tokerebuka Bamwenda, going to visit the Electoral Commission. Which Electoral Commission? It's not there. And later on, I saw him complaining, oh, this Electoral Commission, how can they do this to me? Of course they will do that to you. You know, all these institutions are captured. The Bank of Uganda, do we have a Bank of Uganda? It is a Bank of Museveni. That's why even now there is no governor for, I don't know, a year. Because the real governor has not changed anyway. He's there in the State House. That's the real governor of the bank. He has not changed. So whether there is somebody else there to act in doing smaller things, it doesn't matter. Whatever amount of money he wants will be taken to his home. So ladies and gentlemen, we as a party must examine what our role is. We have a duty to examine in this situation what our role is. Is it to train the candidates for 2026? That is our role. To write a manifesto of what we would want Uganda to be How will that manifesto ever be implemented? Why should even anybody look at it if it has no realistic chance of ever being implemented? You know? So that is a question directly to you. You must answer. What do we do in the circumstances? Regrettably, this is a question that has been recurring in our forum. Because we have debated this, we have tried to answer it, but we keep on moving in circles. Power will not come from those who captured it by force, from those who keep it by force, simply because you have made arguments to show that what they are doing is not reasonable. That because you have ashamed them, they'll say, okay, now it's maybe too much, let us give you the power. It will not happen. We must talk about this. Power can only be procured if we fight for it. If we do what? I know that there are different ideas hanging all over. You need to discuss it and decide where you want to go. I have been talking to some of our people who have given up. And I understand them. And some have gone, have bid me farewell and gone. And I understand them. That's why you have never heard me, demonize those who have gone, like our deputy president who was here. I have never demonized her to say, No. I can understand what she's saying. And others, those who are still here and those who have gone. There are those who are saying, you see, this struggle has taken simply too long. Yes, they are there. There are many who say this struggle has taken too long. The cost is too high. Those who had some means of survival, their means are now depleted. Abali abasajja kati busajja. Because of the struggle, people have sold their properties to survive. And, I'm still talking about turbulence actually coming ahead. So now they say, we have come all this way. Now you are telling us there is still turbulence ahead there. Shall we manage? We are growing old. Some of the people, when we started this struggle, we are much younger. Some people see in themselves the age going. Say, will I die now just in the tear gas? Should I die in tear gas? And Ronald gave me some tissues. And I understand that dilemma very well of people who are exhausted in every sense, exhausted mentally, emotionally, financially, socially, they are exhausted. And there are many, especially amongst the leaders, not the population, because the population has no choice. But the leaders have a choice of saying now, since I'm exhausted, maybe I can talk to the other people who are causing us all this, and they also give me something. And at least my life carries on. So there are some people amongst us who advocate for some form of surrender. Say, we shall not manage this, let's give up. Let us surrender, let's negotiate a surrender. Those voices are there, I hear them. You can discuss them here. Whether as FDC, we should negotiate a surrender. And I've been talking about it because I've been seeing it. Some time back I said all these parties will be captured. I said so on a DP function, at a function of DP, and Honorable Mao was there. I said, you see these people saying DP, there is no Guma, they are be captured. And as if it was prophetic, the next day he was and okay. And the debate had been raging. You know, people saying, but you are green outside, but inside you are yellow. You are like a watermelon, a pumpkin. You know, the debate had been going on. Because those dynamics are there within our parties. They are there. People who think, no, we will not succeed. Let's negotiate, and whatever we get, at least our situation changes a bit. As I have said, that is a matter individually you can engage with. But I have told you that whether you surrender or don't surrender, the struggle is bigger. The existential threat, I told you, is not whether you are yellow, whether you are blue, whether you are red, you are all heading to extinction. What we are talking about is how to halt that. How do we halt the march to extinction? So yes, your life may be a little better for a few months if you negotiate a surrender. But in the end, you will go to the same extinction. So ladies and gentlemen, in responding to the future turbulence, we must make a decision and make it quickly, whether we are still able and prepared to fight and change the control of power in this country, so that power can be exercised by those surging mouths that are hungry, that have no influence in this country. That we can use our resources in a different way from the way they are being used. That we can fund education to the extent that is needed to change the dynamics of lack of knowledge and skills. That we can afford to fund health to the extent that is needed to change the dynamics that we are talking about. That cannot happen unless we change the dynamics of power. And it will not happen unless we fight for that power. So the fight, we have talked about the different ways of fighting. Some of us went to the bush hoping that that was the fight we were engaged in. And indeed, guns can fight the guns that control the country and defeat them. It's not the best way. Why? Because that is the strongest point of those who control power now. Their strongest point is guns. They have huge amounts of arsenals. So you'll be attacking them at their strongest point. But those who want to try and do so, I have never had any problems with them. And we must fight them to stop the treasonable actions that they are engaged in constantly. Yes, we have a legitimate right to fight them. Just like they had a legitimate right to fight to come into power. That legitimate right did not end with them. We have an equal right to fight as legitimate citizens of this country. It's only the strategy that we are discussing. And ladies and gentlemen, we have all agreed that if we use guns to fight guns, and if we are lucky and win, we have not solved the problems because new guns have come into power. And those without guns will not have any less difficulty in causing the new guns to do their will. Even if we took over ourselves with guns, how will those who don't have guns force us to do what they want? They will have no way. Unless it is just our own niceness to say, let's help these people, they will not have the ability to confront us. So that's why I say we have to do the tough work before things can be better. And the course we chose for ourselves, we've discussed this many times, is non-violent struggle, non-violent resistance. It's a fight. Some people think it's peaceful means. No. It's not peaceful because we are fighting very violent people, very vicious people. So there will not be peace. But we want to defeat them without using the means they use. And we can. And we must. And we want to be pioneers. We will not be pioneers. Every country that we talk about, including all these who are spending $12,000 per year on their children, they fought for their power. They didn't just get it. They fought and succeeded and controlled their resources and used them on themselves. So we must. That determination must be made by yourselves. This discussion has been going on since 2011 in our ranks. In order to fight, three things I must again repeat at the cost of indeed appearing notoriously repetitive. We must do three things. First, every citizen must be woken up to the crisis that we face, the crisis of existence, the crisis of survival. We have characterized it the crisis of failure to thrive, FTT. Failure to thrive is the crisis in our country. Everybody must wake up to it. And what is driving it? And people want to wake up unless you wake them up. And I have said that there are even satanic forces we must fight in waking up people. There seems to be some satanic forces keeping people blind. But people must be woken up to the reality that we are confronted with. And it is you that can wake them up. And should wake them up. Secondly, we must organize. This again has been some debate here. Building structures, which is organization. Creating leaderships at all levels in order to give guidance and leadership to people. It's a must. We must organize. But we must organize for struggle. Organizing for struggle is different from organizing people to go and throw a piece of paper into a ballot box. Are we together? How you organize depends on what you are organizing to do. We must organize for struggle. In other words, we must create a network of leaders nationally that will make our people able to have one voice and project it, to act in concert, that if we want to do anything, the whole country can act in concert because they are networked. The critical difference in how we organize for struggle is different from how we organize for competition in elections, competition in electoral policies, manifestos, is that organizing for struggle is non-partisan. Organizing for struggle is non-partisan because all the parties are facing the same danger. Freedom is not partisan. Or lack of freedom is not just a partisan matter. Facing all the institutions of state that are acting against us. They are not acting against just FDC. They will act similar against all. And our objective is not partisan. Our objective of freedom is not partisan. In fact, even those without parties, the churches, the mosques, the what, all of them have a duty to fight for freedom. All of them. I've been telling the religious, those who are in faith-based organization, that actually their primary role is to raise, to become the voices of the voiceless, to speak where their adherents can't speak. And indeed, all the faiths that I know, their central philosophy is that we are all equal before God. We are equal. So fighting for equality is one of the primary religious pursuits. And that's why they must be in the leadership of this struggle. So organizing for struggle must encompass not just the political parties, but even the civil society organizations, the trade unions, the faith-based organizations, the non-government organizations. All of us must organize the population to say no. That's why this organization for struggle is non-partisan. We must all rally together. And again, there has been that debate here in our party. Should we work with others? Won't that weaken us and consume us? Because again, the mindset is in competition in elections, which we have already said will not cause the change of power. So these are all very, very critical issues for you to discuss. So to cause that change, we need change of mindset of our people. 2, organization. And 3, action. Non-violent actions. But if we are organized and aware and confident that we are going to retake our power, action is the easiest. And it takes the shortest possible time. It's like any other war. When we are at war, the greatest amount of time is taken in training, in organizing. In fact, there is a saying in the military that the more sweat you produce during training, the more sweat you shed, the less blood you shed at war. In other words, if you don't train for long and hard enough, prepare yourself to bleed what you didn't sweat. You'll be beaten at war. The war lasts a short time. The preparation takes a very long time. So, some people, I hear them saying, but it's taking a long time. What are we doing? Yes, preparation takes a long time. But there is no shortcut to it. Action, if we were all organized, and tomorrow we decided as the organized lot I have talked about, that from tomorrow we are locking down Uganda, would Muzseveni open it? If we wanted to lock down Uganda, can he open it? There is no way. He has no capacity whatsoever. If we wanted to lock down the country that nobody moves, he has absolutely no capacity to open it. And if we did, and his soldiers saw that indeed people have come up to say no, they'll be the ones to grab him. We won't have to do anything. They themselves will grab him. Like you've seen it elsewhere. Bashir is behind the bars. He's still behind the bars. He was not even captured by the people of Sudan. His own soldiers did what? Captured him. When they realized that the population has made up their mind and they are well organized, they captured him. And this one knows it. Muzseveni, to his credit, he's very aware of all this. That's why he sleeps on the leg. Yes. He's always checking to see whether it's the time. to flee. So, ladies and gentlemen, I must conclude. To address the turbulence we are facing, the starting point is to shift the power in the country from those who captured the power of Uganda and are dealing with foreign powers to take over the country, that we must change that dynamics. Of course, we shall continue dealing with foreign powers, but not to take us over, but to have mutual survival. And that is through this struggle. When that struggle succeeds, we must reset the country under the new situation of power control. And that resetting is what we call transition. We must have a transition. Changing power is not like a switch that you switch on and power changes from there to there. There is a process of reorganizing that power. And that's what we call transition. And that transition essentially has four critical elements. The first one is that once people now are truly in charge of their country, they must determine how they will govern themselves. In other words, they must undertake a constitutional review. They must, as masters now, and don't be deceived. You cannot make a constitution unless you have power. You cannot make laws unless you have power. Because laws and constitution serves those who have power. So, and that's why the 1995 constitution is no longer there. Because those who made it did not have power. Those who have power have changed it to what they want it to be. So we must have a constitutional review in which I consider it will be necessary to distribute power from the center as one of essential elements of that constitutional review. Because part of the problems that has bedeviled us is having most of the power in the country centralized in the office of the president. That should change. I hope the Ugandans will support that it changes. And we move towards where Kenya is, where under their own, and they pass through it, pretty much the same process that I'm talking about. They now constituted 46 counties which have power, real power, and governors governing those counties. And they have their budgets, and they do their things. So that the power at the center is no longer abused to the detriment of everybody. So there, essentially, the first thing is constitutional review. Secondly, is that we must rebuild the state institutions which I talked about that are now captured, that are now not state institutions, but Muzseveni institutions. We must rebuild them now as state institutions. The judiciary must be rebuilt. In Kenya, no judge is appointed by the president. There is a whole elaborate process of appointing judges, including a public scrutiny, so that when a judge is in his seat, he knows he has got power from the people, not from the president. And that's why Kenya, the judges were able to cancel the election of the president when the president was in office, because they have power, original power from the people. So we must rebuild institutions, security institutions, judicial institutions, financial institutions, local governments. We must rebuild institutions. Thirdly, we must reconcile the country. The 40 years, or nearly 40 years, of nepotistic rule, family rule, sectarian rule of Muzseveni has divided the country and created a lot of hatred amongst our people. And of course, the violence also that we have gone through. The violence of Ruwero, the violence of northern Uganda, the violence of eastern Uganda, the violence of Kasese, the violence here everywhere, has left a lot of scars that we must heal through a truth-telling, justice, and reconciliation process in the transition. And by the way, in the previous number 2, where I said we must rebuild state institutions, as we rebuild state institutions, that will also be the possibility to rebuild or to build non-state institutions, including political institutions, political parties. You will not build FDC to be a strong party under the junta. It will not happen. Or any party for that matter. The real time to rebuild institutions, including our party, to make it strong, to present the agenda that we want the country to develop on, is in the transition as the state institutions are being built. Lastly, after reconciling the country, then it will be possible to have free and fair elections. And that will be the end of the transition. Then a new government, fully fledged, will lead the country according to its manifesto. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening to me and what my views, and I believe they represent the views of many colleagues, are on the future that we face and how we need to face it. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for inviting me at a rather short, very short notice to make this keynote speech. And it's always, as I have said, a very, very great pleasure for me to be here at our headquarters and to meet all the activists that have sacrificed immensely to this process. Now, Mr. Chairman, I hope maybe later on in the program you'll give me an opportunity, small opportunity, and I won't take much time like I have taken. But I have been confronted by many of these leaders of ours wanting to know why I have been absent, and especially in the last election where I did not feature very prominently, and many think that
another round of applause.